In this video, you will find a traveler's subjective review, tips and reminiscences about traveling in Corfu, or as known by the Greeks, Kerkyra Island. Welcome to Atlasito, a channel about traveling, well, mostly in Lithuania, as I love showing you around my home country. But from time to time, I like to share my experiences of other places I find myself going to. I love Mediterranean region and its climate, so there are quite a few places I have gone around and lived for a while on the opposite sides of the sea. For Corfu in particular, I received many requests from people around me to give advice about the island from my experience from last summer, so I thought I would share it here too, in hopes that it would be useful for more future travelers. After visiting Crete in 2023, I fell in love with the Greek islands, just like many before me. At the beginning of last summer, I still didn't have any travel plans, as it's kind of unusual for me. Unsurprisingly, considering the wonderful time I had in Crete, without long hesitation, I found myself getting tickets for my family to Corfu, a place I had on my bucket list for a while. This means that I took the trip at the height of the summer season, the middle of July, which I usually try to avoid for traveling. You'll see in this video how that went. But as a short answer to how this trip went for us, here it is. Me, my husband and son, we all fell in love with this island and didn't want to leave, even when it was unbearably hot. Corfu is one of the largest Ionian Greek islands, situated in the north, just a narrow sea strait away from Albania. But don't be mistaken by the naming. While it is one of the largest in the Ionian Sea, it is still quite small. It is less than a 100-kilometer drive from one end to the other, so it is not that hard to travel around all of it during the trip if you like an adventure. That's right, the roads in Corfu feel like an adventure on its own, and I must mention them so you would know what you are dealing with. If you have been to the mountainous areas in the Mediterranean region before, then you know what I'm talking about. But personally, I found that the roads in Corfu are even more tough to navigate than many other places I went to. Roads in Crete were like highways compared to Corfu. Let me explain. The roads here are narrow, usually at the width of one lane acting as a two-way road. Then add to that the steep curves around the mountainous landscape, and finish it off with a lack of upkeep and lots of inexperienced tourists like me driving there. That is a lot of fun for adrenaline seekers. Quite a lot of travelers choose to rent scooters or quads to go around, as it is much easier to navigate the narrow roads and the distances are rather short. It seems like a good option for couple travelers. However, a big downside to this, in my opinion, is using them in the insane heat of the summer, which can seem dangerous without any cover from the burning sun. Speaking of the burning sun, I wouldn't recommend anyone do what I did, going there in July, unless the only thing you want to do is to soak in the sea, which, on the other hand, also sounds like a great plan. Our main goal of this trip was similar to this, to visit as many beaches as we can during our one-week trip. Corfu has more than 70 beaches, so there is plenty to choose from. But if you would also like to explore the beautiful towns or have a walk in nature, even a short walk then you should seriously consider coming here some other time. We were there from the 12th to the 19th of July, and only on the first 2 days the weather was somewhat bearable, at around 30 degrees. Later it turned to be 40 every single day. It was tough even for us, as this heat is known to us from the time when we lived in Egypt. And yet, I still stand by what I said, that this trip was wonderful. Just if you have to come in this time of year, dial down a bit your expectations of how much you can walk and visit in one day. But what about you? At what time of the year do you travel in Europe or the Mediterranean region? Can you handle the heat of the summer? Let me know in the comment section. Okay, now it's time to move on to the fun part. Where to stay and what to do in Corfu. While doing my research on places to visit, I quickly gathered that the prettiest views and most of the places I wanted to see are on the northwest of the island, except for the capital city. For that reason, I chose the accommodation in that region too. There are so many resorts to choose from, and it all differs from what you seek. By no means am I an expert, as I didn't visit the whole island, but from some places that I saw, I can tell you about some of them. I found that Sidari, where the famous Canal is situated, is very much a British place, a very touristic and busy town. Paleokastritsa, one of the most picturesque places on the island, is even more crowded, with only small beaches available around. I first saw the town from a boat, and while it did look beautiful, it felt much better to be on a boat than imagining myself in a queue for an Instagram shot at La Grotta Bar. Glyfada is a small, a bit crowded but very chic place with fairly easy road access from the capital. For flat land, meaning easy driving, and long sandy beaches, Agios Georgios in the south with Issos beach seemed like a lovely place too. In the end, what I chose for accommodation was another Agios Georgios town in the north, next to the famous Porto Timoni beach. The town and the beach were never too crowded as there is a long coastline. We loved staying there as it is close to many of the places we wanted to visit. However, the next time I'll be coming back to Corfu, I would probably choose to stay in Agios Stefanos or Arillas nearby. These beach towns were also peaceful and not overcrowded, but the beach itself was the ultimate winner there. Unlike Agios Georgios, which had a pebbly beach, which is lovely in its own way, Agios Stefanos and Arillas have very soft sand beaches and spectacular cliffs nearby. The best of both. To be fair, once we found Agios Stefanos, we came back for the beach there 3 or 4 more times again. It was just perfect for us. And it was just a 15-minute drive from the place we stayed. But we really enjoyed the serenity of Agios Georgios too, as we were lucky to find accommodation right on the beach there. Now let's move on to the places to see in Corfu. I had so many things on my to-do list, but to be fair, I had to scratch out at least half of them after I saw how hard it was to handle the weather. Nevertheless, I'll mention some of those too, as this definitely leaves an option to come back again. Let's begin from one of the most famous spots on the island, Porto Timoni beach. It's spectacular from above, and you get to enjoy that view during the half-an-hour hike down the mountain. This means that you should be prepared for a rough path, but generally it is manageable with kids too. Alternatively, there are taxi boats from Agios Georgios that start operating from 9 am for a quick and easy reach, but then you wouldn't see the views from the top. Porto Timoni is a truly beautiful place to visit, and the 2 beaches are pretty too, but it gets crowded quickly, at least in July. For seeing this, we came here early morning, before 9 am when the boats start coming, in order to enjoy the place peacefully. Snorkeling here was interesting too, with various coves near the cliffs. If you consider coming here, please do bring a bag for your trash to take away with you, as there are no facilities whatsoever here, and unfortunately a lot of tourists just leave the trash in the bushes. I had hopes of hiking around the little peninsula, but the filth people left behind really disheartened me from doing this. Sadly, one of the most beautiful places on the island was also one of the most polluted. Anyway, let's look at the bright side. Porto Timoni is still one of the most beautiful places on the island to have a look at, even without descending the mountain to the beach. And the hike to the beach starts from Afionas village on top of the mountain, which on its own is a pretty little place too, with some narrow streets and souvenir shops. Some of them I found to be quite unique compared with other places on the island. Afionas is also a popular spot for watching sunsets, as it has great views from the top to the sea. Next, let's talk about another picturesque town and probably the most popular one, Paleokastritsa. First, right near the town in the mountains, there are spectacular-looking Byzantine castle ruins of Angelo Castro. Unfortunately, I didn't climb to the castle as the day was unbearably hot, so I had to satisfy my curiosity with flying my drone from a viewpoint nearby. But I imagine that it would be a wonderful place to have a walk there on a more temperate day. If you are into historic places, then Paleokastritsa town also has a beautiful place to explore, the monastery of Paleokastritsa. Situated on top of a cliff protruding into the sea, the historic monastery has truly magnificent views and has a museum with Byzantine religious artifacts inside. Paleokastritsa is also popular for its beautiful beaches dotted in between the cliffs, which can be great to visit if you are staying in town. I had plans to visit some of them, but at least for my family, I found a different and more exciting solution: to rent a boat for the day. There are many boat rentals available both in Paleokastritsa and Agios Georgios. We rented a boat from our village, which cost around 150 euros for a whole day. We took it all the way to see Paleokastritsa, and instead of landing in one of the beautiful but busy beaches there, we had the option to reach more remote beaches secluded by the cliffs from all sides. Hiring a boat definitely expands the options of how to see the island. One highlight that is popular among those who rent boats is Chomi Beach, or the so-called Paradise Beach, situated behind Paleokastritsa. The name truly speaks for itself once you see it with your own eyes. It is such a beautiful and pristine place, but only reachable by boat. Overall, I would recommend Paleokastritsa as one of the prettiest places on the island, but definitely take a boat ride there too, in order to see those hidden corners around. Next place of the beautiful places to see in Corfu is the famous Canal in Sideri town, in the north. Here the landscape is completely different from the west coast. The beach is all soft sand and the cliffs here are very different, more clay-like than rock on the west side. Speaking of Canal itself, it is a place that is even more popular than the other places I have mentioned so far. For this reason, again, we came here first thing in the morning to check it out. The place is quite interesting to see, and there even is a cave you can swim through. But the beach there is tiny and definitely cannot serve the amounts of people who come there every day, even in the early hours. So we didn't stay there long, just enough to check it off the bucket list, as it didn't leave much of an impression on us. But the next place, which is quite nearby, truly blew my mind with its fantastic views. It is Cape Drastis. Oh, I wish we had just taken a boat from Sideri to get there, but we didn't know what we were missing yet. Instead, like most people, we came to see it from the viewpoint at the top of the cliffs. And while we walked there in the melting heat of 40 degrees, without any cover from the sun, the views paid off the effort completely. In my purely subjective opinion, I think this is by far the most unique, beautiful and most preserved natural place in Corfu. However, the cliffs themselves were quite unreachable unless you come there by boat, so it's best just to admire it from afar. But fortunately, the cliffs that start at the cape are actually very long and continue all the way to Agios town, where there is a great beach next to those cliffs, so you can enjoy there some of those views. Also, there is another cool spot to see these cliffs. It is a cafe situated at the edge of a cliff called Seventh Heaven, and it has a little grass balcony above the cliffs. Although I would warn that it is definitely not for everyone's nerves to step on the see-through floor there. Next to the cafe there are also stairs to descend into a small beach by the cliffs. This is probably even more awesome at sunset time. From tall cliffs, let's go to the opposite, long and sandy beaches of the south of the island. To be fair, while I think the south also has lots to explore, due to the extreme heat we visited only one place in the south, Agios Georgios town with Issos beach. We were very curious to see the beautiful sand dunes and the Corison lagoon. Issos beach was busy, but as it is so long, there is plenty of space for everyone, and the dunes give it a very different feel from the rest of the island. But of course, as we were in the scorching heat, we didn't last long walking in the dunes. But the beach was great there with very soft sand and all the facilities, beach bars and activities nearby. However, if you want to see the pronounced tiny strip of beach between the lagoon and the sea, it is better to come there from the other side in Halikounas, as it is way more narrow there. Before heading to the capital, I'll mention one more beach place we managed to visit during the trip, which left a lasting impression on us. After the burning heat in Issos, we wanted to stop by at another beach on the way home, and for that we chose a tiny Mirtiotissa beach next to Glyfada. Oh, if I had known beforehand what a crazy decision it was. This beach is definitely not for everyone. The way to get there is only through a very steep cliff, which some people managed to go down to with a car, including stupid me, as I thought I would never go back up with our tiny rental car. But why this beach? It caught my eye during my online research with its beautiful setting of sharp cliffs and super soft sand. While the beach experience was wonderful there, I wouldn't recommend going through the nerves of actually getting there. It was a pure adrenaline rush, especially that right next to this there is a perfectly adequate Glyfada beach with the same sand but bigger, and of course, as it is a town, with all the necessary facilities. Actually, we came back here to Glyfada on our last day before the flight to enjoy the luxury of lazily lounging at Pazuzu Beach Bar, which I heard is popular for beach parties at night too. Glyfada was a great option for the last-minute rest by the beach before the flight, as it is just half an hour's drive from the city. Now let's head to explore Corfu city, the capital and the only city on the island. Corfu is quite an old city, with a large and beautiful old town. From a first look, if you didn't know that it's Greece, it would be very easy to think that you are in Italy, and you wouldn't be far from the truth. The truth is that for centuries this island used to belong to the Venetian Republic, thus the whole city of Corfu was built in Italian style. Today, Corfu Old Town and the two Venetian fortresses by the sea are protected by UNESCO World Heritage for the authentic historical and architectural value. Both new and old fortresses are open as museums today, and on a cooler day it would be great to have a walk there. The old fortress built at the edge of the sea provides wonderful panoramic views of the old town and the mainland on the other side. The fortress is also the best place to start exploring the old town if you come by car, as there is a large parking lot right next to the fortress. However, I heard that it can get crowded quickly if you don't come early. Anyway, everything is within a short walk's reach from there, and the old town can be easily explored on foot. The narrow streets truly come alive in the evenings when lots of people come here after the heat of the day passes. Nonetheless, it is really lovely to wander through the maze of the old town with plenty of souvenir shops, various restaurants, and Italian ice cream shops. Because of its Italian heritage, the food in Corfu is a bit of a mix of Italian and Greek cuisine, making it a very interesting blend of cultures. But be aware that Corfu is a very touristic city, and sadly not every restaurant will be as authentic or decently priced. Unfortunately, I didn't have the best experience with food in the old town, and that was after listening to someone's recommendation on YouTube, so I won't recommend anything myself. If you are into art and history, interestingly there is a nice museum of Asian art right near the old Venetian fortress. However, if you want to see any of the ancient Greek artifacts or ancient ruins, then you have chosen the wrong island to visit. Corfu suffered a lot of earthquakes throughout the centuries, which led to the loss of ancient Greek architecture, and there isn't really much to see of that around the island. But if you still want to have a feel of those times, there is a place you can go to. Achilleion Palace is a 19th century palace built in the style to mimic ancient Greece, with plenty of sculptures around its garden displaying themes of Greek mythology. Achilleion was built in the 19th century as a summer house for the Empress Elizabeth of Austria, who was fond of Greek mythology. The gardens surrounding the palace are lovely, although not very large. At the edge of the gardens there is a monumental statue of Achilles, looking towards a beautiful panoramic view of the city below. I cannot comment much about the palace itself, as last summer it was closed for renovation and it doesn't look like it is going to be finished soon. So I would recommend visiting the palace gardens on a day when you plan to pass by the area, as it won't take too much time to explore. Also, there are some places that were on my bucket list to see on the island, but we simply skipped those because of the overwhelming heat. One of them is the famous plane spotting place by the sea near the city. Not only can you watch planes here at a disturbingly low altitude, but there also is a cute looking church built on a tiny island. It's such an idyllic Mediterranean view. For very wide views, there are two good places to visit in Corfu. One of them is Kaiser's Observatory near Glyfada, and the other spot is the tallest mountain peak on the island, Mount Pantokrator. Its elevation is 906 meters and you can see wide horizons from there. The whole island, the mainland of Greece and Albania. Also, the mountain top is easily reached by car, so if you are not afraid of heights, it's an easy trip. But actually, there are so many wonderful places to enjoy panoramic views around the island that you will inevitably pass by some when driving around. For example, this was the view from a random bakery near the village I stayed in, or this view of Paleokastritsa just from a roadside. If you like old places, then have a look at the old village ruins at the foot of Mount Pantokrator. Old Perifea was a 14th century village which was abandoned a long time ago. However, recently some people started to move back in, even opened a tavern, and it is an interesting place to have a look at the rural nature of the island. Another, slightly more recent village to explore is Danilia. It is a 1930s village turned into a museum, where you can transport yourself back to the old days of Corfu. There are also some restaurants there. There are many more places to explore on the island. In this video, I haven't mentioned much of the coast near Albania or in the south, as I didn't travel there. Another spot quite popular to check out is going by ferry to a much smaller island, Paxos, which is wonderful on its own too. Actually, there even is a Greek Netflix TV series called Maestro in Blue, set in Paxos and Corfu city, which was very interesting to watch before going on the trip there and seeing those wonderful views of the Ionian Islands. So overall, Corfu is a great destination to explore, with the beaches that are some of the best available in the Mediterranean, and the views matching both as in the French Riviera or Amalfi Coast in Italy. As for Greece itself, I can only compare it to Crete, which I visited before. Corfu is definitely more green overall than Crete, and more cozy, with small beaches in between the beautiful mountainous landscape. Crete, however, has more variety as it is a vastly bigger island, which also means that the roads are wider and of better quality. I visited Crete at the end of the season, so it would be hard to comment about the crowd levels, but I would not choose to come to either of these islands in the middle of the summer again. With climate change and all, the weather has become too tough in the summer. When it comes to cuisine, somehow I enjoyed it more in Crete. I'm not sure if it is a less touristy island or the locals, the shopkeepers, just were more relaxed in October. But the food was more authentic there, and everywhere we went, we were greeted with the famous Greek hospitality. While in Corfu, the service was mostly very good too, except for that one time in the city. But it wasn't the same as in Crete, and somehow the meal prices were lower in Crete too. Nevertheless, I would be the first to pack my bag if anyone offered to go back to Corfu again. This was just my personal experience in one of the beautiful corners of Greece. I hope that this video was helpful if you plan a trip there. Feel free to ask any further questions about the island in the comment section if you're interested. Or maybe you know something more and wish to share it with all of us. Write that all down in the comments. And thanks for watching!